there, deep divers, it's Julie B, and today I'm diving into the first 3 episodes of the final season of The Handmaid's Tale, Season 6. Back in 2017, this show began as a cultural zeitgeist, a feminist anthem and diatribe against the subjugation of women and our rights, told through the harrowing story of June Osborne, a mother who was ripped from her family among countless other women under an authoritarian dystopian society called Gilead that had overthrown the United States. As the world had fallen into crisis due to plummeting birth rates, an extremist conservative religious group had replaced the U.S. with Gilead, forcing the fertile women into sexual slavery as handmaids, bearing children for elite infertile women and prominent men who called themselves commanders. June's daughter Hannah was kidnapped to be raised by another family, and June posted in the home of an elite family where she was forced to be a handmaid. The underlying message of the show is that women are so much more than just vessels to bear children or be the object of men's affections or lust. But as the series has progressed, it has been undermining its own message a bit. There's still time to turn it all around, though, and the first 3 episodes of Season 6, the final season, have some hopeful hints in this direction. And as always, there is so much to admire about this show. Exquisite art direction, cinematography, acting, direction, all of this is just absolutely masterclass. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start with Serena Joy Waterford, the infamous Serena, a despicable woman who betrayed her own gender by being one of the architects of Gilead itself. We must never forget that she participated in the SA of June as a handmaid posted in her house. She cannot be redeemed when she's truly never faced justice for her crimes, including her complicity in the kidnap of June's daughter Hannah. Then, weaponizing Hannah later on to hurt June on more than one occasion. I fear that the show is trying to put her on a redemption arc anyway. I hope I'm wrong about this, and there's still time to turn it around and hopefully bring Serena to some kind of justice once and for all. Or at the very least, stop portraying her in such a sympathetic light. Is she a cartoonish villain? No. As Mary Shelley once said, monsters are not born, they are made. And I understand why the show is humanizing Serena. She's ironically been a victim of her own creation when it comes to Gilead. All well-written stories should have well-rounded villains, but I maintain that Serena cannot be redeemed unless she has truly been brought to justice, and that simply hasn't happened yet. In the premiere episode of Season 6, June and Serena find themselves thrust together unexpectedly on a train heading west through Canada, having been driven from Toronto along with other American refugees as anti-American sentiment rises in Canada. Serena makes several ridiculous flip comments that undermine June's understandable trepidation about leaving her daughter Nicole alone with her, or about letting Serena even touch her at all. Serena actually mocks June for her concern, saying she's not some Disney villain who's going to steal her child. The fact that Serena can stand there and say that, after everything they've been through together, proves she's still learned little from her transgressions, and she's completely clueless. She literally did try to steal this very child when they were in Gilead, after June gave birth to Nicole in the first place under her roof. She was required to turn her daughter over to Serena to be raised as Serena's own. June wanted to name her daughter Holly after her mother, but as per protocol, Serena claimed the child and named her Nicole. Ultimately, Serena actually did what was best for the baby and, shockingly, allowed her to be smuggled out of Gilead to Canada, where June later reunited with her after her own escape. But that's still not enough to redeem Serena for all of her misdeeds. Serena also disregards the fact that June's firstborn daughter, Hannah, was also stolen by Gilead, ripped from her arms. Her cluelessness is astounding, once again. She suggests that she and June are somehow allies now, that they're on equal footing as victims of Gilead. And while it's true that Serena became a victim of Gilead and inevitably suffered oppression there because she's a woman, she was one of the architects of this place to begin with and participated in June's SA. She still hasn't shown sufficient remorse for her actions. She tells June she's sorry and expresses empathy for June's suffering, but it rings hollow for me. Because in the next breath, she's talking about moving on from the past and presuming that June will suddenly be her comrade now, selfishly clinging on to June so that she won't have to face life completely alone with her baby Noah as they go off into the unknown on the train. She offers to help June in return, as June is also alone with her baby. June is quick to remind her that they are not the same and she doesn't want her help, but she relents because she truly is all alone except for Serena at this point. Then when a doctor on the train calls the police and exposes Serena's identity, the survivors of Gilead around them turn into an angry mob and try to attack. June links hands with Serena and does her best to protect her, and it's understandable because Serena has her baby with her, so June is putting the welfare of the baby first. In a telling moment, before the mob attacks Serena, her saintly mask comes off. She drops her phony remorseful act and her true monstrous colors come flowing out. She starts ranting about how the U.S. was full of whores before Gilead came along and saved it. So this proves she's not sorry at all for what she's done, and she's still learned nothing. She's only sorry that she's had to suffer as a result of the monster she helped create, the Society of Gilead. Yet as the mob is closing in, June tells them that Serena had already paid for her misdeeds, that Gilead had cut off her finger for the sin of reading while female. But are we as an audience supposed to forgive her just due to the tragic irony that after writing a book that helped inspire the creation of Gilead, the powers that be ordered the removal of her finger for reading the Bible? It's not enough for me. She deserves to be in prison for her crimes. She doesn't deserve to be free and raising her son, and she certainly doesn't deserve the incredible strokes of good fortune that come her way in episodes 2 and 3 this season. Back in season 5, Serena had to suffer a brief experience of what it's like to be a handmaid while living in Canada, as she had to live with the ultra-religious Mackenzies, who degraded her and tried to take her child from her. The plotline didn't really make much logical sense, to be honest. It was extremely short-lived, and it felt like a ham-handed attempt to shoehorn in a lesson in empathy for Serena, and a desperate attempt to generate sympathy for her character, complete with the rather cliched moment when Serena got slapped by Mrs. Mackenzie. Look at Serena even clutching her cheek, with the hand missing a finger prominently displayed for the camera. Again, that extra layer also seems like a blatant attempt to drum up sympathy from us for her. Serena and her baby made a lightning-fast escape from the situation and only suffered a modicum of the trauma of a handmaid, and certainly no SA occurred. I want to be very clear about this. I am not saying I wanted to see that. I don't. Two wrongs don't make a right. I didn't ever want to see Serena as a literal handmaid being assaulted, or even being in that less extreme situation that she was in with the Mackenzies. I'm just pointing out that I think the show is trying to set Serena on a redemption arc, using brief plot devices to give her a taste of her own medicine, but it's not enough for me. Again, she belongs in prison and has not shown genuine, lasting remorse for the magnitude of damage that she's caused. If Serena had never become a mother herself, I doubt June would be protecting her. But as soon as Serena delivered her child in season 5 with June's assistance, June has started to treat her differently. June could have left Serena all alone out in the middle of nowhere, but she turned back and helped Serena deliver her child. They actually connected on an emotional level, and June has protected her multiple times since then. When the Canadian government later took away Serena's child and placed him in foster care, Serena screamed for June to do something to help her, and June couldn't help her in any way, but she clearly felt sorry for her. Because June seems to believe children belong with their biological mothers, after having her own child ripped away, no matter what those mothers have done. But again, Serena should be in prison for her crimes. There are plenty of families who are unable to have children in the world of this series, and the baby could have been welcomed into a loving home. And sure, June has also harbored immense rage towards Serena, even wanting to murder her when she settled in Canada. And when she ran into Serena on the street once there, she came close to shooting her before being talked down by Luke and taken away. But June still keeps vacillating between outrage towards Serena and inexplicable sympathy for her as a fellow mother. As the mob closes in, once again Serena begs June for help, saying if she's arrested, they'll take her baby Noah away from her and she'll never see him again, that he'll be raised by the Mackenzies. To June, this particular plea should fall on deaf ears because that's exactly what happened to June. She's never been able to be with Hannah again after she was ripped away from her. Except June was not guilty of any crime when that happened. And yet June sympathizes with Serena. She doesn't seem to want her to be arrested and looks upset when the doctor tells her the police are on their way to apprehend Serena. Yet the officer who shows up pretends not to know who she is, revealing that he lost his family due to Gilead and leaving her at the mercy of the mob. When the officer declines to arrest her, June tries to convince him to do so, clearly just to protect Serena and save her baby from the angry mob, telling Serena to trust her. But the officer refuses. Then June saves Serena from the mob herself and pushes her off the train with her baby. Now I want to be clear again, I am not advocating in favor of the mob at all, who look like a bunch of zombies mobbing Serena until June stops the train with the emergency lever. Again, two wrongs don't make a right. Serena should have been arrested, but since the officer neglects to do that, June does the right thing by rescuing Serena and her baby. Still, I have to think that maybe a better solution would have been for June to insist on taking Noah and then push Serena off the train, to protect the child and still make sure Serena isn't harmed. It's as if just because Serena is a mother, June automatically has sympathy for her. But any monster can spawn a child, and the message of this show should be that the value of women is so much more than just serving as vessels to bear children, in contrast to Gilead's view. Time and again, June's sympathy for Serena, just because she's a mother now, that undercuts the overall message. Also, remember that June participated in the cold-blooded murder of Serena's husband, Fred, yet she keeps giving Serena a pass. Of course, in that case, vengeance was not the answer, either, and June's bloodlust didn't bring her any peace. And Fred was guilty of more crimes. Serena was oppressed by Gilead, too. But as one of the members of the mob on the train pointed out in horror, Serena SA'd June. It wasn't just Fred. Serena participated in it, as all the commanders' wives do. So she shares in the guilt of that, and yet June doesn't seem to recognize that, at least not as much as she should. To close out episode 1, when June reaches her destination of Alaska, she has a beautiful reunion with her mother, Holly, who she had believed to have died doing deadly work as a prisoner in the Gilead colonies. But Holly had miraculously survived and her camp had been liberated. In the second episode, June and her baby Nicole have been living with her mother for a few months, when she learns that thanks to the leader of the U.S. in exile, Mark Tuello, her husband Luke has been released from jail, pending trial for the killing of the man who ran her over back in Toronto. Luke and June share a brief, emotional conversation in which he neglects to tell her that he plans to work with Tuello against Gilead. In episode 1, Tuello had informed Moira that Canadian authorities will likely push out the U.S. government in exile there within a year, as anti-American sentiment has risen and they want to normalize relations with Gilead. With the remainder of the U.S. military in shambles, Tuello has begun relying on Mayday, the underground resistance movement of civilians in Gilead with whom June had worked before she escaped. They planned to assassinate the most extreme commanders who had shot down some American planes that had tried to rescue June's daughter Hannah in a previous season. Luke is determined to take an active role in the resistance against Gilead, with the awareness that his daughter Hannah is getting closer and closer to the age when she will be forced into marriage. He and Moira volunteer to help run messages across the border. Then they become trapped and at risk of capture by Gilead forces in no man's land. Meanwhile, after being released from jail in episode 1 for punching Commander Lawrence back in season 5, he meets with Lawrence and with his father-in-law, Commander Wharton, to smooth things over. Nick had been spying for the U.S. government and secretly meeting with Tuello in return for Tuello's protection of June. But he stops responding to their messages after his father-in-law tells him that he needs to do what's right for his new family, his wife, and his unborn son. His father-in-law, Commander Wharton, seems to sense that Nick is up to things he shouldn't be, and seems to be aware that Nick is in love with June. Tuello believes that only June's presence will bring Nick back to their side to help retrieve Luke and Moira. But before she leaves, she clashes with her mother over Nick, a scene that gives me hope, actually. Her mother, Holly, correctly calls Nick out for what he is, a word I can't say without being flagged on YouTube, but she compares him to a type of fascist from Germany in World War II. We tend to condemn the people who directly commit acts of atrocity, but we also need to direct blame on those who have said they were just following orders, as many of these German soldiers did after the war when they defended themselves. Nick may not have personally gotten his hands dirty, in that he hasn't committed any acts of violence against women himself, and he hasn't engaged in any activity with a handmaid, but he is still complicit in this oppressive, authoritarian regime that forced women into various forms of slavery, including sexual slavery. There's no getting around that, and it's refreshing to see someone finally confront June with this reality. June doesn't want to hear it, of course. She immediately shuts down and tries to defend him, saying, "He's not like that. He's not like the others," because love has put blinders on her when it comes to him. June is the heroine of this story, and she's done remarkable things, but she's no saint. She's deeply flawed, just like everyone else. She's done unspeakably horrific things along her crusade against Gilead and its leaders, and her love for Nick has compromised her judgment regarding him. However, reuniting with her feminist mother this season, the woman who instilled in her such strong feminist values, could hopefully open June's eyes to the truth and push her to finally let go of her love for Nick. Meanwhile, after being pushed off the train with her baby into what had seemed like barren wilderness, Serena has impossibly good luck once again. She always lands on her feet. She just happens to land near a faith-based community of women who take her in. There, we see flashbacks of her from before the creation of Gilead, showing us that her father had been an ailing, elderly preacher, and she had wanted to make him proud, as she wrote her extremist religious conservative book. It just seems to me that the show is trying to drum up more sympathy for Serena with these flashbacks, sympathy that has not been earned. She hasn't shown genuine contrition for her egregious crimes and the damage she has caused. Quite the contrary, she puts on an act of contrition when she's in a position of vulnerability, as she was in episode 1. But as soon as she gets an opportunity to wield a position of power once again, she leaps at the chance, and we soon see this by episode 3. The leader of the women's community reveals that she knew all along who Serena was, but allowed her to stay there anyway under her assumed name of Rachel. Serena says she's sorry for the harm she caused via her role in the creation of Gilead, and this woman urges her to make it right then. But then Commander Lawrence shows up and requests that Serena move to his settlement of New Bethlehem to help him convince world leaders that they have instituted reforms to their society in this place. She believes that this is her divine calling and has delusions of grandeur immediately about this. In New Bethlehem, they're trying to convince refugees from Gilead to move there and reunite with their families, and for once they recognize that Serena has value in this regard, precisely because she's a woman. If she vouches for them, then international attitudes are more likely to improve. She's resistant at first, seemingly wanting to distance herself from Gilead at last, but he ominously warns her that the eyes know where she is, and it's only a matter of time before they come for her there. So Serena agrees to relocate to New Bethlehem as episode 2 comes to a close. And while she agrees to do this under some duress, I would still argue that the events of episode 3 show that she hasn't really changed at all and isn't looking to make things right. At any rate, Serena and June end episode 2 on separate journeys into risky new territory, literally, but what June is undertaking is an act of bravery, while Serena has selfish motivations as usual. In episode 3, far from feeling like a prisoner of Gilead, Serena seems to be relishing her new position of authority and influence in New Bethlehem. She helps to convince foreign dignitaries that it's safe for female refugees to relocate there, as a woman and a mother herself, shamelessly using her own baby as a prop to make her point. And the dignitaries take the bait completely, to her smug satisfaction. She points out that women are allowed to read and write in New Bethlehem, as if this is some wondrous reform and as if it somehow makes it okay that women in the rest of Gilead still cannot do these things and have no rights. Her positions are considered progressive by Gilead standards, but these are hardly progressive values for women's rights, and if she had truly changed, she would be railing against Gilead, not helping to prop it up now. Of course, she does have her son to think about, and she wants to protect him. She had told June in episode 1 that if she were arrested, then her son would go back to the Mackenzies in Canada, a religiously conservative family with the same values as Gilead. But is he any better off with Serena? Once again, the threat of the Mackenzies in Canada seemed like a ham-fisted way for the show to justify Serena's actions now. The message seems to be that she's at least in favor of women being allowed to read and write, so her son is better off with her, and if she hadn't agreed to Commander Lawrence's offer, she would have wound up being arrested and her baby would have gone to a more extremist family. What makes me uncomfortable, though, is how much Serena seems to be relishing her new position in New Bethlehem. She doesn't seem to be a woman under duress at all. She appears to be in her glory. All she's ever wanted is power, privilege, and influence to preach her religious views. She believes she's some kind of chosen one, anointed by God. Under Gilead's system, as she tells foreign dignitaries, she had lost her identity and her voice. And that's true, but she helped to design the very system that ultimately took away her voice, and now she's playing the victim. Here in New Bethlehem, she gets to have her cake and eat it too. She can continue to follow her extremist religious views, but now she has her voice back, and she can raise her son here without being forced to get married like other women in Gilead, perhaps. Is this justice? Not at all. Is this Serena trying to make things right? Not at all, in my opinion. Now, let's address the June and Nick situation. Make no mistake, I see June Osborne as a formidable woman with indomitable strength, courage, persistence, passion for the cause against Gilead, and an insatiable drive to save her children from its horrors. Yet, she also strays from her own convictions because from early on in the series, she has essentially fallen in love with a fascist. Now, I understand why June and Nick are a popular couple on the show, and I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers, but I can't mince words here, because as June's mother herself had said in episode 2, to paraphrase her here, Nick Blaine is a fascist. I don't see him as an evil man, not at all. To be sure, most of the characters in this show are morally ambiguous and have done terrible things to survive in this world. But the fact of the matter is that Nick is complicit in the authoritarian regime of Gilead, and he actually was part of the violent coup that overturned the U.S. government to begin with. Even after June found out the truth about that, despite her initial horror, she hasn't been able to shake her feelings for him, and has seemingly forgotten all about that at this point. Nick had gotten swept up in the extremist movement to overthrow the U.S. as a naive young man. He came to deeply regret it. He hates Gilead and the damage it's done, but it's as if he joined the mafia and now he's trapped. But is he really trapped, though? As a man who has been promoted to commander, he certainly has more freedom than June ever had in Gilead. And yet, she managed to perform incredible, courageous feats, like when she freed dozens of kidnapped children, sending them to reunite with their families in Canada. She's performed many other acts of heroism and rebellion, too, for which she paid dearly, being tortured as punishment. She worked with Mayday to deliver messages, got her second-born daughter Nicole safely sent to Canada, escaped captivity multiple times, traveled west to join the war resistance against Gilead forces, and ultimately escaped to Canada herself. Yet there Nick is, still in Gilead. I would argue that he is unworthy of June's undying love. No one is immune from hypocrisy. There is no such thing as a perfect heroine of any story. No matter how much gorgeous backlighting adorns her lovely frame, June is a deeply flawed person just like everyone else. Thus, she has fallen in love with a man who is complicit in horrific crimes against women. There's no glossing over that. That's what Gilead stands for, and that's what he's complicit in. I can understand June being a flawed person like everyone else. She can't help who she loves. It's out of her control, even though it goes against everything she stands for. What I don't understand is the way in which the series portrays her scenes with Nick in such a dramatic, romanticized way as if to glorify their relationship. There have been many scenes between Nick and June over the course of the series portraying their torrid, star-crossed love affair in a romanticized way. Like this one in this very episode. They secretly meet in the woods with gorgeous lighting bathing the two of them as they reunite and embrace each other in slow motion, and the musical score swells in the background to stir up our emotions. Thus, once again, the show is trying to pull us into this star-crossed forbidden love affair, as they give in to their adoration for each other and steal a few moments of joy together before they must part ways again. June even makes a meta joke about it later in the episode as Nick is saying goodbye to her as if it will be the last time forever, and she says they should just say see you later, because there will inevitably be another romantic reunion. For instance, there was a memorable scene in a previous season in which they reunited with a dramatic kiss, and the camera swirled around them with the classic 360-degree pan, and again the romantic music swelled. But there's still hope that this could change this season. With the presence of her mother back in her life, June's eyes may be finally opened about Nick this season, and this will enable her to truly live up to the role as the heroine of this series and a feminist icon. Or perhaps Nick can finally start to redeem himself by doing something to stand up for all the oppressed women and children of Gilead, not just the individual woman he happens to love. Later in the episode, Nick admits that the reason why he agreed to spy for the Americans was so that he could see her in the hospital after she was run over. Again, he only ever does what's right to indulge his feelings for June and to protect her. Finally addressing the elephant in the room, June implies to Nick that she chose Luke, her husband, mainly because he waited for her for years, and she admits that she still loves Nick. She also loves Luke in a different way, but Nick points out that he only feels this way about her, no one else. Still, she seems to feel an obligation to stay with Luke and to bring him home safely, and Nick is willing to do anything June wants because he loves her that much, so he assists her with this. If June hadn't shown up, he would have continued refusing to help the exiled U.S. government anymore, violating his agreement with them. Thus, Nick lacks integrity and he's a coward, unworthy of her love. So no matter how much we as viewers might be swayed by the romantic portrayal of these lovers with such strong chemistry, being the incredible actors they are, with exquisite cinematography and direction, if we look back over the events of the whole series, we have to face the fact that Nick only ever does the right thing and defies Gilead when it's something that June wants him to do, or if it's something that will keep her safe, only because he loves her. Anyway, Nick and June find Luke and Moira in no man's land. As they're about to escape, some eyes show up and try to intervene. Suddenly indifferent to the risk involved or potential consequences, Nick kills them and escorts June, Luke, and Moira to safety. Once again, Nick is willing to put everything on the line only for his love for June. Not for justice, not for decency. He didn't do this for Luke or Moira. He did it because June loves them, and because he loves June. Simple as that. Even June herself knew that only her presence would motivate Nick to show up and help. Tuello admonishes him to start responding to the Americans' messages again, as per their agreement. And I hope to see him finally do the right thing this season, and stand up for something other than simply his love for June. Once again, they have an emotionally charged separation, as they struggle to tear themselves away from each other, with June headed out of Gilead with Luke and Moira. If this show wants to send a more convincing message that women are more than just vessels to bear children and objects of men's affection, then some changes need to be made this season. Either June needs to finally let Nick go, or Nick needs to step up and fight against Gilead, to put his neck on the line for justice once and for all. And Serena needs to do much more than just be a good mother to her son in order to redeem herself. She needs to finally face real justice. She doesn't deserve June's forgiveness and sympathy merely because she became a mother. I will of course acknowledge that June said plenty of harsh words to Serena in the first episode of the season. She hasn't extended full forgiveness to her. But time and again, June has stood up for Serena merely because of her shared quality of motherhood to a baby. And I don't think that Serena's son is any better off being raised by her than he would be by another family. After all, at least he's a boy, so he'll have many more rights no matter who raises him. Serena just shouldn't get off this easily. Now, notably, Aunt Lydia finally turns up in episode 3, searching for her beloved Janine. Aunt Lydia is another deeply complex character. She genuinely loves all of her girls, as she puts it, the women placed under her authority as handmaids. She has a special fondness of Janine, a woman who, let's not forget, had one of her eyes removed for speaking back. Lydia has been unspeakably cruel to all of these girls she loves so much, subjecting them to physical torture and participating in this system of oppression that forces them to be SA'd and give up their children to elite fertile women. But since she's taken a special liking to Janine, all of a sudden she's railing against Gilead and expressing her outrage for its treatment of her, not unlike Nick, who only sticks his neck out for an oppressed woman he happens to love. As punishment for disrespecting Commander Lawrence's wife, Janine has been sent into forced prostitution at Jezebel's, much to Lydia's horror. She visits Janine and is devastated to see what she views as her moral degradation. She's actually more horrified by what she views as the immorality of prostitution itself than by the fact that Janine is an unwilling prostitute, and therein lies the problem. How is this really any different than being a handmaid, anyway? A handmaid is just a more dignified-looking sexual slave in this society. Lydia doesn't see a problem with placing Janine and others into homes as handmaids, but forced prostitution is despicable to her. Janine implores Lydia to just leave her alone because every time Lydia has tried to help her, it only backfires. Much like Nick, Lydia cannot have any hope of redemption on this show unless she rails against Gilead's entire system, and not just the forced prostitution or the mistreatment of this one handmaid with whom she's become personally attached. Now, in the coming episodes, it appears that June, Moira, and others will join the fight to start a handmaid revolution, which will be a welcome change of pace. A preview shows June and Moira undercover, donning the brown clothing of Martha's. And chillingly, June is back in her handmaid garb for the first time since season 4, but hopefully she'll be undercover or leading a handmaid uprising and not back in servitude. Even more chillingly, in another shot, a woman in a handmaid outfit can be seen standing on a gallows platform in front of a crowd. Her back is to the camera, so her identity is unclear. It's long past time for a handmaid revolution. The trailer also shows handmaids taking out what look like switchblades in what is sure to be a thrilling scene. They're sitting in pews, possibly in the cathedral where a wedding is taking place. But whose wedding is it? It appears that Serena Joy could wind up marrying Nick's father-in-law, Commander Wharton. He has already appeared to be interested in her, and he's the one responsible for Lawrence bringing her to New Bethlehem. The identity of the bride isn't revealed in this shot, but it's likely to be Serena Joy. Even under the more progressive policies of New Bethlehem, she'll probably feel pressure to get married, and I think she'd actually relish the opportunity to marry such a powerful commander who already has given her a voice back, which her deceased husband Fred had taken from her. It's clearly the wedding of an important figure, given the grand scale of the affair, taking place in a vast cathedral with a procession of handmaids and many others in attendance. They're wearing mouth coverings, which we've only seen on handmaids in D.C., where Commander Wharton is from, and he's certainly an important figure. He's the High Commander, the highest-ranking person in all of Gilead. There's still plenty of time for the series to turn certain issues around. Nick can stand up for what's right and not just for June. Serena can face some real justice, and June can let go of her ill-placed love for Nick if he fails to rise to the occasion now. And I remain hopeful that all of this can come about. I'm not advocating for the oppressed to become oppressors. I wasn't rooting for the mob that attacked Serena, for instance. Vengeance is not the answer, and two wrongs don't make a right. But it is time for a revolution, and it looks like that's beginning. This scene shows a dramatic, violent clash between handmaids and Marthas versus some men in dark clothing. And it's time that the enablers and architects of Gilead, including Nick, Serena, and Commander Lawrence, to stand up for what's right and start fighting for justice, or they just cannot be redeemed. Even if that justice means they will have to pay for their misdeeds and complicity in this dystopian nightmare. Now, I want to know what you think. How do you feel about June's journey being torn between Luke and Nick and feeling sympathy for Serena? Is it possible to redeem Serena, Nick, or Aunt Lydia, and how could that come about? What do you think about Nick's role as a Gilead commander who only stands against Gilead when the woman he loves is at risk? Is he really deserving of June's love? And what does her love for him say about June? Is anyone even redeemable at this point? Even June has done unspeakable things, as the oppressed often becomes the oppressor. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. And until next time, keep on deep diving and let's see what we can uncover together.